Welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast, where we deep dive into the best matches in AEW history. Brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network and your host, Sam Brown. Yes, hello and welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thanks for joining me. Every week, alongside a special guest, I take an in-depth look at one of the best matches in AEW history, taken from the definitive AEW Match Guide, as ranked by over 30 wrestling commentators from around the internet wrestling community. And you can find that list on WrestlingHeadlines.com. If you enjoy the show today, you can subscribe and rate it on the podcast app of your choice, and make sure you check out all of the other great shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. My guest for today is a returning guest, a podcaster and writer for Pro Wrestling Musings and Eno Wrestling, Gareth, and we are looking at Serena Deeb versus Riho from Double or Nothing 2021. How are you going today, Gareth?
I'm good. I'm very good. Excited to get into this match now, because it's one which I think, when it came to that match guide, I wasn't sure how it would rank and stuff, but I was happy. I can't remember exactly where it came in. You might be able to tell me, but I remember being happy and being like, that seems reasonable. That seems good, and I'm glad that it kind of got the praise it deserved, or I feel it deserved anyway.
Yeah, it's one that has come out favourably with the rankings. It came in 22nd on the match guide.
That was it, yeah.
Yeah, so quite
Top
good.
25.
Yeah, absolutely. Why specifically? Obviously, you said you did enjoy this match. Just briefly, why did you choose to pick this match, Gareth?
Well, this match in particular came at a time where, the women's division, as has been the case for most of the time in AEW's existence, but it was getting a lot of flack and stuff, and people from some people, and then other people saying, well, the quality just isn't up to scratch, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And, to have a match like this, it was just a great thing to be like, you are capable. This division is capable of doing it. Obviously, we've got other examples like Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa is the obvious one. But yeah, if it was a great match that really kind of came at the right time, I think, not just for both these wrestlers, although some circumstances have meant they haven't been on TV a lot recently, but hopefully that's changing now. But yeah, it came at a good time for the division as a whole and AEW as a whole, I think. And am I right in saying it was the first match back in front of fans, properly? Because it was on the buy-in.
Yeah.
Was there? There wasn't another match on the buy-in, was there?
No, there wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember there was just this general feeling of just excitement and brilliance around this match, and then going into the match as well. And then it's always great when you have that, but it's even better when the match actually delivers. So yeah, it's just a lovely match, and something which I thought, like I said, was going to go under the radar a little bit, but has actually, I think, been ranked pretty well in your definitive match guide list. So yeah.
Yeah, the people who remember this match and love it really seem to love it in that case. So we will get into this match as we always do here on the match guide. We'll give the match its flowers. Dave Meltzer gave it 4 stars at the time. Cage Match Rate has it currently ranked 7.84. And as I said, in that match guide that we put together in 2021, just after this actually, it came in at 22nd. And this match for the build itself, so it was a very sporting build actually. Both wrestlers weren't super active early in 2021, but they did come across each other in the women's title tournament, the title eliminator tournament that they had at the start of the year. And both women had pretty good showings in AEW at different points, for different reasons, hadn't been around a whole lot. Riho, of course, was the first women's champion, and then got stuck in Japan when the pandemic hit. So really didn't get to wrestle a whole lot until that tournament came around. And then Serena Deeb showed up in 2020, sort of in the second half of it. She fought against Thunder Rosa on AEW TV. They had an NWA title match. And, of course, she fought against Hikaru Shida and a number of other wrestlers lower down the card. The Rosa and Shida matches were the most prominent ones and availed herself really well as well. So both women going into that tournament were, quite highly ranked. Do you remember much about the first match that these guys had, Gareth?
Yeah, their first match was fantastic as well. not quite as good as this one, but I just remember like it kind of had elements that we'll get onto in this match. It had elements, obviously, because it's the same two wrestlers, but like a very similar kind of setup and stuff like that. But obviously, Riho actually got the win in that one. And it was one that I found it hard to call because, when you're looking at the tournament and when the matches fall and stuff like that, when these two came across each other, I was not quite sure which way they would go and stuff, because obviously Deeb being the NWA champion, but it was always in the back of my head that she is the NWA champion, so she's probably not going to win this tournament, and whoever beats her probably then faces her for that thing. It's just a classic, it's simple stuff, but it's classic wrestling, just booking basically. So I was like, could that be Riho? And as the match was going, I was kind of like, well, I hope it's Riho, because I'd like to see this again. And then obviously that is what they did, and then their second match, as we'll get onto, was even better. But yeah, it was a great initial match they had, and I was a little bit sad that Deeb didn't get a bit further in the tournament and then lose a little bit further, just because I would have liked to have seen, because like you said, she was still quite new to the company and while she had been established to some extent, it was still kind of hard to see where she ranked on that list of the top contenders. And then obviously she was above the likes of Anna Jay, who she had a match with, but she was very much someone who was brought in to kind of help along the younger talent. But it became more and more obvious that she should be someone that AEW should utilize as a star in her own right, and finding the right packaging and character for her to do that, which I think this match that we're going to talk to really helped do. We'll get onto that. But it was at the time of that first match, it was hard to see exactly where she stood, basically. But
yeah, she was still finding a place in the hierarchy of AEW, even though she was the NWA champion. It was obvious, she was a big deal, but where did she actually fit in amongst the top contenders in AEW? And that match happened in February. So of course the match we're looking at today, the Double or Nothing match, happened in May. So there is a few months in between this, but that initial match, I just want to make a few points because it does very much inform what happens in the actual match. So it initially set out sort of pitting Serena's technical skills against Riho's flexibility and speed. And it should be noted that Riho wasn't dormant during 2020. She actually wrestled in Stardom quite a bit against some of the top women in the world. So she comes into this tournament, really firing and ready to go, having been battle tested against some of the best wrestlers on the planet. And Serena had a bad knee at the time. And crucially, this match showed Deeb in particular that Riho could use her flexibility to counter Serena's submissions, and also that she didn't have the normal sort of grappling superiority that she would have against most people, and that Riho could match her in technical exchanges, and proved that by winning after a series of pinning attempts. Riho got the better of it and won the first match with a Gato clutch, of course, setting up this match for later on, which is for the NWA women's title match. So going in, it's, actually quite a sporting build in terms of they've had the first match because Deeb is the champion. When she got beaten, she then sets up a match down the line for the challenger who's previously overcome her in a non-title match. So it's not nothing. Obviously, there wasn't, I should note, there wasn't a lot on TV about this match, which is something that we will park that conversation. We will have the conversation about the women's the women's division. I think after we've talked about the match itself, but should be noted, even though they did have that great match, which was on AEW Dynamite, there wasn't a lot building up to this match beyond that, which was 3 months beforehand. And this was on the pre-show as well. So I didn't actually watch this one live. I heard it was really good, so I watched it afterwards because it got great reviews. And I think there's a lot of people who fall into that category. So we come into this match, as we said, it's actually the first match that they had full crowds back for, which is an interesting distinction for it to have. It's late afternoon, the sun's shining. I love a late afternoon match in wrestling. I just think it's such a cool atmosphere, particularly for a pre-show, because you just get a sort of energy, and it's like, you know that it's building up, and the fact that it's late afternoon, it adds to that sense of anticipation. And I want to Actually, no, we'll talk about the introductions first. Riho, she's really happy to be back. Deeb is like pumped up. She sort of takes a step to take it in and then just like roars at the crowd herself, gets to the ring, gets on the turnbuckles and is really getting the crowd into it. They're already cheering, but she's like pumping them up even further. So like great work from Deeb. Veteran move there. I want to take you back, Gareth, to this moment. We've had limited crowds. If you've been watching New Japan, we've had clap crowds. If you're watching WWE, we've had the Thunderdome and we've had piped in audio. And there's, of course, WrestleMania was in front of a live crowd as well. But for you, being an AEW fan, having not heard it for over a year at this point, how did it feel to just hear that crowd roar and reacting after having not had that for so long?
Yeah, it was just great to see. I think Riho's pop was there, but it wasn't a huge pop. Like, it wasn't quite what I was expecting, and I was a little bit like, the crowd's a bit overrated. Have we just been starved and they're actually crap? And then I started worrying, do they just not care about this match maybe? But I don't know what the reason was for that. But then when Serena Deeb came out, obviously Riho still got a pop. They're still happy to see her, but it wasn't like as big as I was kind of hoping.
Wasn't religious.
Yeah, so I was a little bit disappointed. So my expectations were a little bit like, okay, maybe we'll have to get to the actual show before the crowd get really pumped up. And then Serena Deeb comes out, and again, they pop a bit more for her, and then she really pumps them up, and then they just start going crazy for like the rest of the night, really. But yeah, no, it was good. It was weird to see that Deeb got the bigger pop, but obviously at the time she hadn't turned heel. I think it's safe to say she's turned heel now. In real life, or in real life, or in real time now.
Yep.
But like in this match was kind of like the start of where she really started showing that.
Yeah.
But it was funny the fact that she did get the bigger pop, and then the way they managed to work a crowd into starting booing her later, and then really cheering Riho. But like, yeah, it was great throughout this match to see the crowd. It was just that initial disappointment of like, why aren't they screaming their heads off?
One of the great things this match does early on, because you've got, as we said, we've got two really finely honed veteran professional wrestlers here. And they could have just had like this technical classic sort of style, like your Savage Steamboat sort of technical classic match that you would have. But really early on, Riho offers a handshake and Deeb just like draws it out, gets the crowd involved, and then just slaps her in the face. And it's just like, straight away, the crowd is immediately into that as well. And it's like, look, we could just give you an exciting, like, a bunch of moves, but wrestling is about more than that. It's about this interaction between the crowd, and it's about a story between a hero. At its most simple, is about a story between a hero and a villain, and a hero trying to fight a fight to win from underneath some sort of villain who for some reason you don't want to win, and immediately they set up those stakes and the crowd is just like, oh yeah, I remember this, this is so great, let's do it. Boo, yay, boo, yeah.
That is the moment, that slap where they really get into it, and that is going back to your point about the crowd,
such good match composition.
The moment, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Deeb is just like vicious after that. Deeb is just like vicious on offense, big European uppercuts, targeting Riho's knee, which of course, throwback to the previous one where Deeb's knee was injured. She's now going after Riho's knee. Even grabs Riho's hair and her nose, holds on beyond the 5 count at different points, really just showing a mean streak and being like, I'm going to win this, because pride wounded from losing the first match, and now the title's on the line. She's not going to lose. And one of the things that shows just how good Deeb is, and also Riho is as well, because we forget Riho's really young, but she's been wrestling since she was like, I don't know, 5 years old or something ridiculous. They start him early in Japan. Is when Deeb's going for an abdominal stretch. And I always find that when they do that move, it feels kind of hokey and 80s and a bit like the stereotypical rest hold that's a bit boring. But instead of having like some sort of artificial break or something that's contrived, they instead sort of shuffle for position with their footwork. And I just love how technical that is and how organic it feels. And for these two, it just emphasized to me how pro these two are and how creative also they are at, thinking up ways that they're going to structure the match and structure the moves, even something as small as that.
Yeah, it was really interesting because obviously when I thought back on this match before I watched it back, it just kind of in my head is just those moments of Deeb, those heelish moments where obviously the slap and then obviously the brutal strikes and then the hold she puts Riho in and stuff. But watching it back, it was really interesting to see actually that Riho does do a lot of that technical side herself, and it really is a technical battle, even though obviously Deeb gets the better of it. It's very much a battle there, and Riho has to utilize her other strengths such as her speed and diving off the top ropes and all these kind of things, whereas Deeb is very much more focused on those hard strikes, just particularly those uppercuts you mentioned, utilizing her size advantage, but then also this really interesting technical battle between the two of them, where I think ultimately come the end of it, it's just Deeb's desperation and pure violence that is the difference between them, rather than her necessarily simply out grappling her. It's like it's a character making an active choice to act a certain way, rather than just two wrestlers slapping on moves. So she's not just locking in holds, she's locking them in and throwing them in as deep as she possibly can, because she knows, from that previous meeting, that Riho can surprise her and use that speed to her advantage and get a win. A lot of Riho's wins just come out of nowhere, kind of like Darby Allin. And it's a really fascinating technical battle, but the difference being their mentality in doing so, really.
Yeah. I think Deeb does dominate the middle of this match. I have a pet theory that I think Serena Deeb is a very big Hiroshi Tanahashi fan. She does like the twist and shout. She does lots of dragon screw. Yeah. And this is almost a Tanahashi-esque performance, in that sometimes when Hiroshi Tanahashi is against another face, he will almost play the heel in the way that he just wants it so much. He is prepared to, as a character, I guess, who wants this thing, he's prepared to show a more aggressive side. There's a particular match against Shinsuke Nakamura that they have for the IC title after they've traded wins and things. It's at Invasion Attack 2014, where Tanahashi just pulverizes Nakamura's knee and is just ruthlessly going after it. And this is the guy who's the ace of the universe. He's like the face of the company, the hero that everyone loves, and yet he's just made this decision to completely pulverize Nakamura's knee, and the crowd turn on him in the match, and of course it doesn't affect his long-term trajectory. Goodness me, it doesn't affect his long-term reaction that he gets. But for that match, he's made that decision to be more vicious, to be more dominant, and to be more aggressive, and that's what Deeb does in this match here, at least, because she knows she has to get the win, because when she just went in for a normal, what she'd consider, I guess, a normal fight, she lost in the previous meeting. And as you said, when Riho does get offense, she really goes for it. And I think that's something I love about Riho's offense, is just how she throws her body so completely into it. With her stomps, she doesn't kind of glance off her opponent. She just lands straight in their abdomen, just plump to them. And I guess she's lighter weight, so she could still get away with it. But I don't know, even if you're less than 100 pounds, you're not jumping straight into my abdomen, thanks.
Yeah.
And when she throws her strikes, she contorts her whole body and just really throws herself fully into them, and puts her whole body into it. So it's I don't know, to me it just really, even though she's smaller, really just shows this sense of impact and how much she wants it by how fully she commits to it.
Yeah, another thing on that point about Riho's body, her body is naturally so flexible and bendy that when Serena Deeb, whenever she locks in a hold, it looks like this brutal thing. And some of the moves, there's a power bomb at one point where Deeb just smashes her down, and Riho's body just kind of compresses. And I just thought, like, when I watched that, I was just like, how has something not gone wrong there? But her body just naturally, I feel like, again, obviously she does that bridging up spot all the time. You know, her spine just seems to be like able to bend backwards just perfectly easily. And it's just like, I don't know, she must do a lot of yoga, or maybe, I don't know, like she obviously does a lot of like work on that because, or maybe it's just naturally that way. I don't know. But it's just, yeah, her body just kind of moves in a way which kind of I've never really seen with anyone else. And it's perfect for making Serena Deeb just look absolutely brutal, just look like an absolute killer, because you just see these little limbs bending in ways that she shouldn't. And you're just like, how has something not just gone wrong? Like, how has she not actually just snapped her leg off or something? Like, I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure if you know this from the commentary, Gareth, but Serena Deeb, also a yoga instructor.
Yeah, they did mention that a lot.
They mentioned that a bit.
There was at one time they mentioned it. They mentioned how that kind of informs how she knows how to hurt people.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like, I never would have thought that about yoga. Like, that someone would use that and be like, yes, I know how to make, stretch in order to make, my muscles relax in a certain way, or, feel good, or how to look after them, or whatever yoga is meant for. But I never would have thought. If you had a
fitness instructor try and hurt you, you need a better personal trainer there, Gareth.
yeah, exactly. But I never would have thought, a yoga instructor would take that knowledge and be like, this is how I can actually hurt you. But that again just kind of informed this character of Serena Deeb as someone like, you're manipulating what I thought was quite a noble and nice kind of I don't know what you call it really. What is it? Practice, I guess. And you're using it for your wicked little games. But yeah, again, that kind of made me just dislike Serena Deeb, which for the purpose of this match and again the long-term future now for her character, seems to have been very effective, I think. So
it's interesting how, because you mentioned that like it suits it because of the way they framed it. I remember it just reminds me of how important it is to frame things like that so that they make sense. Because I remember at first there was that meme about Britt Baker where they just kept on mentioning she's a dentist, she's a dentist, she's a dentist, and it became like did you know she was a dentist? But then Chris Jericho on commentary, when he was doing the commentary in the closed off the Georgia tapings, he said the reason we mentioned she's a dentist because it's bloody hard. Like, it's really difficult, very impressive. So, of course, we're going to mention it because it shows how impressive she is. And I was like, oh, of course, that's why. So it's just.
And then also her submission move as well. Naturally, again, she's manipulating what I thought was quite a noble, practice, and she's using it for her own gain. Something which other people don't really understand.
Some symmetry there between Britt Baker and Serena Deeb. That would actually be a good feud, face versus heel. Anyway,
yoga versus dentistry.
I don't 100% know what's going to be happening when this thing goes to air. So who knows who knows who Britt Baker's current contender for the AEW Championship is. Anyway, getting back to the match. Like Riho has like a flurry of offense after there's like a period of domination by Deeb, and then Riho has a flurry of offense where she hits, her version of the Tiger Feint kick, the 619 for a close 2, and Serena gets back on the front foot like desperately, sort of dodging that double stomp that Riho does, hitting the Tanahashi combo, the dragon screw, and then the twist and shout, then hits that power bomb.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, up to 25 cents a gallon. Cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
Some months I make $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code MONEY for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your next fill-up. You can cash out anytime to PayPal or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code MONEY for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code MONEY.
Talking about where she just like drops her on her neck, and it's one of the great things about Joshi actually is because they weigh so much less, they can take a little bit more risk in terms of the bumps they take, and like this is a very high angle bump that Riho takes off this power bomb, and after some more back and forth, Serena gets in like this brutal single leg Boston Crab after dodging a knee attempt. It's like this really smooth counter. I think Michael Sidgwick from What Culture calls it like his dream spot, the dodging the knee and grabbing the single leg crab.
Oh yeah, between Omega and Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, well, these guys did it first, so.
Yeah, they did. And I remember when that happened, like in the moment, you just see Riho sprinting and then Deeb doing that, and I just remember just letting out like one of the biggest like audible pops that I have, even though I just sat there on my own, well, on a call with my friends, but just screaming, and it was amazing because usually you don't get that from a buy-in match.
And then in an interesting, and this is one of the great pieces of sequel wrestling that I think they've got here, Riho kind of tries to enter into another pinning combination sequence where they're, sort of testing each other technically. The kind of move that got Deeb caught in the kind of sequence that got Deeb caught in their first match. And Deeb immediately exits that instead of going, against most performers, she'd probably lean into that and go for it, thinking that she can get the win that way. But because she lost to Riho that way previously, she gets out of it and instead pulls a brutal looking dragon screw before just like pounding Riho's knee on the canvas and then like bending it back so far she's literally touching Riho's head with her foot, and Riho's just got no choice but to tap at that point. This is not a long match, but it's really effective ending here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite endings of the year, probably just ever, generally, because a really good submission locked in. The one, as we're recording this, Bryan Danielson versus Bobby Fish just happened a couple of days ago. And the I can't remember exactly what the hold was, but it was a knee lock. Heel hook, there we go. And he just, the way Bryan locked that in was so brutal. And it's just so great when like a wrestler really knows how to lock in a submission. And Deeb, again, is just an absolute expert at it. And Riho is, again, like I said earlier, just a perfect body to take a move like this because she'll just bend naturally anyway, and it just looks so brutal. But those those smashing of the knees into the ground of just like pure frustration and just like trying to just tear someone's leg off. It's just so crazy, and it's just the exact kind of stuff I love from like a heel, which is why after this match I was just so desperate for just turn a heel, which obviously now has happened. But like, it's just one of those just visual things that you can't really put into words apart from just saying how great it is. I think I can't really find the words that I want. I just think, if you haven't seen this match, obviously go watch it first of all, but particularly for that finish, like you said, Riho's going for that kind of pinning combination, and Deeb's just like, nope, smashes her leg, and then just locks in that Serenity lock, just so deep, and it's just amazing.
It's funny with wrestling submissions. So often you see them and you're like, oh, you can see the gaps, you can see they're not fully executing it. Particularly, I think about like some of the arm bars you see, and it's like, look, if you had this in an actual MMA match, you would be like, you should be snapping their arm right now. Yeah. And so quite often you can see that there's an artifice, and that's okay. Like that's that's part of the point of wrestling. If the performers are doing their job correctly, you buy into it anyway. Yeah. But this one, like, you just look at it and you can see her like tapping her on the back of her head with a foot. I can't remember whether it actually made contact, but it near enough did. And you just know how inflexible you are as a 30-year-old white male, and you just sit there and go, what the hell hell is she putting her through right now? Like, even for a super flexible person like Riho, and I don't know if there are any, I don't watch a whole lot of Joshi wrestling. I know they're more flexible than most wrestlers, but I don't know many other wrestlers, if any, who could take that kind of submission the way that it was put on. And it just looks so brutal.
Yeah, that's the word. I think probably the word I was looking for is just brutal. Like those pounding of the knee into the mat just before that as well. Yeah. It's just like, it was so kind of unnecessary, really. Like, it's one of those things, but it's just like, in the moment, the energy that's like erupting around the crowd, and then just watching this person just smash a knee. And it's something you don't really see very often, something like just smashing a knee into a canvas as well. It's very simple, but it was just so good. And I think Deeb had, obviously, she locked in, you mentioned she locked in like the single leg Boston Crab, which is very basically is the Serenity lock, but there's just a slight difference. And then I think she locked in another leg-based submission earlier. It's definitely something she was working throughout the match. But every time she did, she locked it in like brutally. But when she locked it in right at the end, like, she took it to another level. And it's just like, it really showed that building of like how much Riho could actually take, to the point where it's just like, okay, there's just no way any human being could stand any more than this. It's just one of my favorite finishes, I think, to a match. I'm going to say ever, but I don't know if it's ever. But, you know, fantastic finish, basically. Yeah.
I love how educated it is from their initial match as well. Like, you've got Deeb went into that initial match with a bung knee. And so she knows the pain that it takes wrestling through when you've got a knee that's injured and that's hurting. Deeb's injury got worse as that match progressed. And then, of course, as I said, you've got her avoiding those technical exchanges that normally she'd go into, because she knows that's how she got beaten last time. Then you've got her also right at the end, just using the knowledge that she's got from previously to avoid getting caught again in what Riho's trying to throw exactly the same set of techniques in. She just avoids it and goes in. It's just incredibly smart in the way that it goes about it. And even just her tone going in, instead of going in just as an equal level sporting endeavor, she's going in far more aggressive, far more ready to injure and harm, because she knows that last time when they were on an even playing field, and when she gave Riho the benefit of the doubt, or sort of a more sporting performance, or she knew she got beaten, so she goes in with a different outlook.
Yeah, exactly. That was great, and I wish they did like kind of build this match a little bit, because that was all told within the match. But I think, you know, as with anything, it's always going to be lost on a lot of people, just because, you know, not everyone sees the same things or whatever. Not everyone, you know, maybe thinks into things as deeply as we do, being kind of wrestling nerds or whatever.
I mean, even if they just the week before had a segment, in an interview segment, for example, or a video package segment with Deeb talking about how she got caught out last time, but it won't happen again, and Riho, you know, saying how she was excited to maybe become the NWA champion, because at that point she was moving over to America, and maybe saying, look, I'm moving over to America, and what could be a greater way to start that than taking on the most prestigious title in women, well, one of the most prestigious and historic titles in women's wrestling, the NWA Championship. Even just a 1 minute video package could have added a little bit to this, that, you know, would have been elevated even further from, and potentially even, as I said, I didn't even watch this, and I'm a pretty big AEW fan. I didn't watch this initially because I was just wanted to get straight into the pay-per-view, and I can't watch live here in Australia because of, you know, various family commitments and stuff, so I watch in the evening. And I was like, let's just go straight to the pay-per-view, and caught this afterwards based on the buzz it was getting, and I'm glad I did, because it's so good.
Exactly. Like, it wasn't like the story heading into this was super complex or needed weeks and weeks of build. It was something that they could have done with just, like you say, because even I'm not sure how good Riho's English is. I know Shida was getting a lot better, or has got a lot better now. But like, even you could just do a little kind of interview segment in Japanese and do subtitles, as long as it's not like a 5-minute promo. Like, that's perfectly fine. Like, people have people aren't thick. They can, well, some people are, but most people can read. Most people can read, like, for a minute or so of Riho explaining why this match means something to her, and Deeb explaining why, it means something to her, and the match wouldn't even need to change. Everything would be the same. It's just, it gives those fans, because again, like I mentioned at the start, it seemed like the fans weren't super into this. Like, they were kind of into it. Like, Riho got a bit of a pop, Deeb got a bit of a pop, and when she told them to, come on, let's go, it was a bit of a bigger pop. But the first like proper pop was when she slapped Riho, and then people are like, oh, okay, this is what we're seeing. And basically what you needed to do was do that, but just before the match. And obviously it was a shame this was on the pre-show as well, because it was so good, it deserved to be on the main card. I think the actual reason for that was because if they put it on the main card, they have to then give NWA some money. Like from the pay-per-view. I think I saw someone say something about that, and that kind of makes
sense. He's got enough money. He's got the Smashing Pumpkins money.
yeah. So I don't know if that's the actual reason, but it kind of makes sense to me. But it was disappointing. But either way, I'm glad that the match happened, and being the first match back in front of fans as well was a big deal. Tony Khan actually said that's why he wanted to do this, because he had faith that this was going to be a match that really got fans up for it. And I mean, you can't really disagree with him, because it did. The fans, as the match progressed, the fans are just getting more and more into it, which is just a sign of how good the match was, really. And the story they told physically between them, obviously it tells the story that we kind of wanted, kind of set up a little bit. But that was all told there between them in the ring anyway. So it wasn't the end of the world. It's just a shame and maybe a bit of an indictment of the ongoing problem with AEW's women's division, that for a match, even though it's on the buy-in, a match on pay-per-view or at the pay-per-view, let's say, even if it's not on the actual card, but a match there doesn't really even have, obviously there was pre-context to it, but there wasn't really a build, if you know what I mean. So it was a shame in that sense. Yeah,
I've picked up the context to it by going back and watching the previous match and thinking about it, but it wasn't the wrestlers, and the wrestlers did it, but it wasn't made explicit by the actual presentation of it, which is a fault of the presentation, because it's something the presentation should be mentioning and should be emphasizing when you something like this happening. In terms of with this match, in terms of its legacy, it was the second highest rated women's singles match in the AEW match guide, behind Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, who came in third on the match guide, quite a clear third with their unsanctioned match. In terms of the AEW women's matches, where do you think this one does rank? Do you think it coming in second is the correct ranking of it?
Obviously, we've had a few matches since, or a few months since the guide was updated, let's say, because it's something you're going to keep going.
It was Double or Nothing to Double or Nothing. Well, it was the first 2 years of the promotion's history, so anything after Double or Nothing 2021 wasn't included in it, and will be included in a future iteration of it, hopefully, when that time comes. But in terms of up until that point, would you say that that's a fair ranking of it?
I'd say so, because I can't really think of anything I'd put above. Like Shida versus Thunder Rosa was fantastic as well. Riho versus Nyla Rose. I actually preferred their second match, where Nyla actually won. But I really like that. Shida versus Nyla as well. Their first match was really good. There are some
that's
other
the
ones,
one that's the one I would say I'm split on. I've probably got to go back and rewatch that at some point. Maybe that's a good one to do in the future with someone. But I think that came in like 50th or something on the list. But that was my pick up until the unsanctioned match, in terms of what was the best women's match AEW had done, was the no DQ match they had at Double or Nothing 2020.
Yeah, which I can definitely see. I'd say personally, for my tastes and stuff, this would definitely be my number 2, behind Rosa and Baker, which I think is unquestionably number 1. Even though I think I'm hopeful anyway that they can outdo that. Because obviously it's very much a it's very much, well, it's a hardcore match in essence. So I'm hoping that when they get back to their third match, obviously because they had one before that as well, which is apparently going to be built to in early 2022, some point, maybe Revolution or something. But I'm hopeful that they can top that, because I have faith in them. And I think something like Serena Deeb versus Thunder Rosa, if they did that again, I think they can top that. I think maybe
just before we're saying if they did that again, this is recorded in mid-October, so if this being December probably, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've got a TBS tournament.
I'm sure it's great.
Yeah, they got a TBS tournament to come, so maybe we'll get something in there. But
that's true.
As of right now, like, there are matches I can think that probably could top this, and I'm hopeful that we get those, because the more good matches, the better. But yeah, as of right now, I think I'd have to put this number 2, and I would love to put it number 1, but I think that unsanctioned match, it was a thing in its own. Like, it was not even just the match in itself. I'm sure you're going to talk about it at some point on this podcast, but like, it was a match which kind of just defined, women's wrestling. So yeah. Whereas this was just a really great match.
Yeah, I feel like that match got the build that this one didn't get. Even though they're very different matches, of course, and doing very different things and telling very different stories. It as much as anything got the build that this one didn't get. In terms of the way they built that animosity between Baker and Rosa. You didn't really get to see that in the lead up to this. And then, of course, for various reasons, 6 months and these guys have had like a handful of matches between them, Riho and Deeb. Of course, Deeb got injured. Riho had issues with the vaccine that she got. It's such a shame that they couldn't capitalize off this immediately and really do something with it immediately, because, look, as we've said, it's a match where in the ring and on the night, it just blew the roof off and really succeeded on every level that it possibly could, that you could want from a wrestling match. But unfortunately, there's just so much around it that's not ideal, and that's a sad thing. And that unfortunately does affect the legacy of this match, I think. Yeah,
for sure. You would have to say that, because like you say, if they're able to capitalize on this, or if this was, for example, this is maybe going a bit hopeful maybe, but if this was the turning point for AEW's women's division, if Deeb comes out of this a new character, goes on a tear as a heel, Riho, just doesn't disappear after her, obviously health problems, then, maybe they get the ball rolling properly. It's, quite hopeful to say that. But if that had happened, and you could really look at this match as a turning point, I think people would always look back on this match with the respect I think that the work itself deserved. And I think it is, an example of various examples, the unsanctioned match being another, and Shida versus Rosa being another. They're kind of scattered out because AEW tend not to give us many, really exciting women's matches. But even though the talent is there and the dream matches are there and stuff, and all you need is a reason to make those. You only need is a story to tell, and then you've got those matches there. But like, this match really is another example that they don't really have any excuses anymore. The talent is there, and obviously with the example of Deeb and Riho in particular, they obviously had their issues and why they've gone. And luckily now Deeb is very much back on TV with her feud with Shida, which seems to be going to a rematch. And maybe people have said maybe that's the final of the TBS tournament and stuff, and that could be a really awesome feud, which we've already had one great match from, and hopefully get 2 more or something. Like Deeb, I think, especially the character she showed within this match, it's something that could have been a really big improvement to the women's division, and hopefully moving forward now that's what it is, I think. Yeah.
Well, she has, as we've noted, this is recorded in October, so who knows what's happened in the time between when we've recorded this and when it's gone to air. But she has come back and shown this character, this sort of more vicious side of her, this brutal side, and hopefully that is the path to her through AEW, because it in this match itself is incredibly compelling and creates an incredibly compelling story, and is a great foe for someone like Riho, who is such a lovable character and wrestles. We've showered Deeb with a lot of praise, but Riho is someone who is the perfect foil for this, because she does wrestle with so much heart. And she's such an underdog because she's small, but she gives everything she gives her whole body to this match because she wants it so much. It's so easy to get behind her because of that. And she also is a genius at laying out matches, as we've seen with this, as we saw with her match with the first match she had with Nyla Rose at the first Dynamite to crown the champion. I was blown away by the way they laid out that match and just took people who couldn't care less to on their feet screaming for her to win because she's so good at playing that underdog. And in this match, it is a perfect foil for Deeb taking this darker turn and this more serious turn. So, as I said, I think this match is fantastic. You've said that yourself as well. Is there anything you'd like to add there before we let people know where to go and get out of here?
I can't really think of anything. All I'll say is like you said, you didn't watch this match initially, and I think there are probably quite a few people who just never really got round to it, and if you're one of them, go and check it out. I mean, we've broken it down, probably spoiled a lot of it, but now you know what to look for and you can just sit there and enjoy it. So that's what I'll say. Yeah,
this is a match that rewards rewatching as well, as I said, digging into it, watching that first match beforehand and seeing all the callbacks. Brilliant piece of sequel wrestling that really holds up on a rewatch and get more from as well. Definitely check that out. Gareth, before we get out of here, let the good people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at Gareth_EW. I write stuff regularly on pro wrestling musings. Slightly more irregularly now that I'm going to be starting my YouTube channel, Eno Wrestling, where I'm going to be focusing on, obviously wrestling content, but focusing mostly on AEW, which if you got to the end of this podcast, I presume you're probably someone who's interested in that. So go and check that out. Unless
you're my mum. Hey, mum.
Hello, Sam's mother. But that's where you can find me.
Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter, Sir_Samuel. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, Gareth. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And to you for listening, I really appreciate it as well. As I said at the start, if you enjoyed what you heard today, you can like and subscribe and review it on your podcast app of your choice. Make sure you check out all of the other great shows here on Social Suplex that span across the internet wrestling community. And make sure you join me next week, where we're going to be looking at Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega, the exploding barbed wire death match from Revolution. That will be sure to be a fun podcast. Lots to talk about on that one. So make sure you join me again next Friday for that. And thank you again for listening to the AEW Match Guide podcast. Thanks for listening to the AEW Match Guide podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then you can subscribe on the podcast app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to let me know on Twitter at Sir_Samuel. I'd love to hear from you. The AEW Match Guide podcast is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where you can find many other fantastic podcasts discussing not just AEW, but all parts of the world of professional wrestling. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Sam Brown.